That's my district, and that's what people want. They are so tired of their hard-earned tax dollars being sent overseas to foreign wars and foreign aid and foreign causes, while life in America just becomes more and more unaffordable. We want this money invested at home for our infrastructure, for programs, for our people, and most importantly, for my children's generation and their children and their children and generations to come. When I drive around my district to all these beautiful little rural small towns, and there's manufacturing plants that are crumbling from decades of lost industry.
Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene has been incredibly vocal in her acknowledgement that inflation and affordability are still massive issues here in the United States, and that the Trump administration has failed to tackle these issues at all. And now Trump, seemingly in a fit of desperation, is making some interesting promises to the American people, isn't he, Cenk?
Yeah, of course. So now that he's seeing right-wing and left-wing populists win by actually addressing the voters' needs, Trump is going, oh, okay, I'm gonna fix this. I'm just gonna give you $2,000. Is he actually gonna give you $2,000? Well, let's find out.
Well, look, I mean, you make a really good point. I mean, Zohran Mamdani's mayoral win in New York City has led to Trump basically realizing that he has lost some ground on the issue of the economy and affordability. And it turns out that things are still super expensive and inflation continues to be a problem, and Trump knows it. In fact, the latest government data shows that inflation persists, even ticking up slightly in the most recent consumer report. It's now at 3%. Grocery prices have risen since he took office. And a Washington Post ABC News Ipsos poll found that the majority of Americans say they are spending more on groceries and utilities than they were a year ago, when, of course, the president was Joe Biden, and he certainly wasn't getting a lot of kudos for how he handled the economy. And on top of that, a recent NBC News poll found that only 30% of voters believe that Trump has lived up to their expectations for tackling inflation and the cost of living. And here's what consumer sentiment looks like, according to Harry Enten over at CNN.
According to the University of Michigan, we are dealing with the worst ever view of current conditions dating all the way back since 1951. This is record-breaking in the way you don't want to be breaking records. And get this, Kate, it is down 30%. Consumer sentiment of current conditions down 30% from January, when Donald Trump took office.
How much are they blaming this on President Trump?
Yeah, it would be one thing that President Trump could ignore it if folks weren't blaming him for it. But take a look here. Trump's policies have worsened economic conditions in America. Look at this. We're dealing with a super majority here. We're talking about more than 3 in 5 Americans, 61%.
Not a good look, and President Trump knows it. In fact, Trump called affordability a new word. No, come on.
Is it?
Come on, guys.
Is it?
Come on.
He once, I swear to God, you could look it up. He once claimed he made up the word fake. That it's his invention, he added it to the English language.
There was also something new today. He said, nobody knows what magnets are. Anyway, that's a tangent. Let's move on. Let me give you the rest of that graphic there. So Trump called affordability a new word and said that Republicans had not talked enough about it. He then blasted it as a con job by Democrats. Eventually, he declared, I don't want to hear about the affordability. But in reality, Trump has mentioned the word affordability as much in the last week as he has in the past 9 months. That's really telling you something, especially when it comes to his priorities. Then there are the denials. You know, when he hits the denial phase, this is what it looks like. He says, quote, the reason I don't want to talk about affordability, everybody knows it is far less expensive under Trump than it was under sleepy Joe Biden. But the numbers don't bear that out. Now, he came back from his trip in Asia only to attend a lavish Great Gatsby themed party, as people were terrified of losing their SNAP benefits due to the government shutdown. He keeps posting about the new Lincoln Ballroom and how fancy it is. He's remodeling it in black and white marble with gold faucets and light fixtures, which I have to admit, That's the kind of aesthetic I personally like, but still, politically speaking, optics-wise, not a good look when people are struggling economically. And he also can't stop talking about the renovations at the Kennedy Center, which he said would be outfitted in marble and magnificent high-end carpeting. So look, you might not be able to put food on the table for you and your family, but how about that carpet at the Kennedy Center, huh?
Whoa,
yeah.
Is it also totally golden? Okay, because I want everything to be gold, but only for the elites. You guys, your premiums are gonna double. If you're on food stamps, they're gonna get cut. But at least the elites have more golden rooms. Oh, that makes me feel so much better.
Now, Trump does seem to be realizing that his popularity is waning, partly due to the affordability issue. So on Friday night, he announced that he was directing the Justice Department to investigate whether meatpacking companies were engaging in collusion and driving up the prices of beef. If I recall correctly, when there was actual evidence that companies that hadn't been hit with supply chain issues were using the inflation narratives to artificially inflate their prices and price gouge Americans, that was nonsense. That was a crazy conspiracy theory.
Yeah, and I remember when Kamala Harris first said that she was going to tackle price gouging, what happened was everyone flipped out in power, right? The Republicans were like, there is no price gouging, corporations are your friends, right? And then mainstream media freaked out. This sounds socialist and terrible. What do you mean price gouging? You're trying to do something about affordability, you monster, right? And what did she do? Being the coward that she is, she withdrew that policy basically. She had Mark Cuban go all over cable news and go, oh, I didn't mean it, I didn't mean it. Beloved corporations, I bow to you, right?
Now look, when it comes to the meatpacking industry, I looked into this very briefly, so I could be wrong, but I haven't seen any evidence of them price gouging. We are having inflation issues right now, probably because Trump pressured the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates. I think they did it prematurely. We're barreling toward not just inflation, guys, but stagflation, where employment keeps rising and inflation keeps rising with it. That's what we're dealing with right now. And Trump's trade policies have a lot to do with it. I mean, calling it trade policy is kind of a joke because it doesn't really seem like there's any real strategy here or any real policy here. It just depends on how he's feeling at any given moment. And it is harming our farmers, it's harming our economy. Let me just give you a few more details here and then I'll open it up. So look, then on Sunday morning, meaning yesterday, he proposed doling out $2,000 or $2,000 dividends from tariff revenue, not including high income people, he wrote. In the same Truth Social post, he claimed that there is no inflation when the latest reports indicate that the inflation rate is up to 3% at this point. And he is, again, blaming the US beef producers of artificially inflating their prices. Now, keep in mind that the $2,000 stimulus checks, they sound great, but that could also contribute to the inflation issue. And then on top of that, the Fed cutting interest rates and doing so pretty rapidly, they're planning to do so pretty rapidly, also heats up the economy at a time when companies are laying a lot of people off.
Yeah, so in terms of price gouging, there's real factors that lead to inflation that not a lot of politicians can help. One is supply chain issues that happened during COVID. Another is the Federal Reserve keeping rates really low for such a long time that it caught up with us and it caused inflation, which is normally what happens. So that's why when Trump puts a ton of pressure on the Fed to lower interest rates, there's some advantages to that policy, but one of the disadvantages is that it might pour fuel on the fire of inflation, right? So on the other hand, during COVID and all those issues, we covered the stories of companies that were bragging on their calls to investors saying, oh yeah, the initial problem was supply chain, but then we took advantage of it because we realized that if we all do it at the same time, basically, the market will bear higher costs. So we just drove up costs to add to our bottom line. And on the investor calls, they're like, bravo, bravo, way to do it, because that does increase their profits, right? And,
yeah, the shareholders profit from that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But who pays the extra money? We do, right? And so there's no politicians that helped us on that at all. And in fact, Trump fought against it during the campaign, saying price gouging basically was no big deal and that you shouldn't blame companies for it.
He denied that it even existed.
Yeah. So now all of a sudden, now that he's dealing with inflation and increased inflation since he took office by 1.4%, all of a sudden he's like, price gouging, price. I found it. And I'm going to bully these companies into lowering price rate, but that's not how economics works. You could do that in the short run. A good example of that is in the beginning, the car companies are like, we're doing rebates, this, that, less rebates now. Walmart saying, oh, we're going to lower our Thanksgiving package by 25%, the cost of it. Then you find out, yeah, that's because they took out more than 25% that was in that Thanksgiving basket.
Yeah, the food package, exactly.
And they turned it into generic products rather than brand label. So that package is now worth a lot less than 25% off, right? So it's a trick, but in the long run, the macro numbers show you what's actually happening, which is that inflation continues to go up. But that trick's never gonna work. You could trick people on foreign policy, you could trick people on culture wars, things that they don't see. If you tell them, oh my God, half the country is trans people and Muslim people and they're gonna take over, but they don't see them, they're like, I wonder if it's true. But they see the price of eggs and milk every week.
Right.
You can't trick them on that. And he keeps thinking that he can. It's not gonna work.
And one of the lines of defense that the Trump administration claims they have is that they're working hard to lower the cost of energy, right? The cost of gas and oil. But do you think that starting a war with Venezuela or Iran is gonna in any way benefit oil prices or gas prices? Of course not. Of course not.
It's going to make them sky high.
Exactly.
But the oil companies are going to be thrilled. They're going to get the rights to the Venezuelan oil at dirt cheap prices for themselves, not for us, right? They're going to make a bigger profit margin. Plus, because while the war is happening, the market will constrict. Their prices will go up because of supply and demand. So we're going to get doubly screwed.
Yep.
And the oil companies are one of his top donors. They're going to get double paid. So they're thrilled about it, and the rest of us are going to get absolutely hosed.
All right.
So the $2,000.
Oh yeah, so let's talk about the $2,000. So he is saying that he is going to, first of all, in his Truth Social post, he basically started taking jabs at individuals who are critical of his trade policy. And look, I've put my cards on the table. In his first term, when he did targeted tariffs on China, they did work. Okay, in fact, as I've said a billion times, the Biden administration took a look at those tariffs, liked them, and expanded upon them. But they were targeted tariffs. In the case of this whole Liberation Day fiasco, it has been a complete and utter nightmare, both when it comes to our economic health here at home, but also in regard to foreign relations. So remember, we have a longstanding ally, India, that as a result of our Trump-induced trade war with them, decided to get a little closer with our political adversaries. So Russia, China, you get the picture. India went to that summit that was held in China earlier this year, and that wasn't a good look for the United States either. So you can sell me on a tariff policy that's smart, that's strategic, that's targeted. That's not what we're getting here. And so the only thing that we are seeing as a result of Trump's trade war is inflation. The fact that we are borrowing money, guys. We are borrowing money to ship abroad to Israel. By the way, the Ukraine as well, for them to fight their, well, in the case of Israel, genocide. In the case of Ukraine, they're trying to defend themselves against Russia. Might be a fruitless effort, but nonetheless, the point I'm trying to make is when you do that, when you have our treasury printing money, that's also adding to this inflationary environment.
Yeah, and besides which, they've already walked it back. The Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent went on ABC this week with Stephanopoulos. Stephanopoulos presses him on it, and he's like, well, we might handle that at a different time. And they're not gonna do it. Of course they're not gonna do it. They don't have that much money. It's just a same old rhetorical trick that Trump uses every time. Whenever he's cornered, he's like, oh, I'll give you money. I'll give you 2,000, I'll give you 5,000, I'll give you this, I'll give you that. It's a classic con man thing to try to get out of a tight place. Okay, by the way, let's find out. And if you're a Trump voter out there and you're a little skeptical of us, let's all see if we get $2,000 checks, okay? And if we do, and he gives it to all Americans minus the rich, right? And it really does come from the tariff money, it doesn't put us into further debt, then I'll give him credit and say that I was wrong. But you're gonna see, he's not gonna do that. His second official came out today And he's like, yeah, less so. We're looking into it. That's when they have an unrealistic Trump idea that would bankrupt us, and they know they're not going to do it, but they don't want to lie 100%. They only want to lie 95% on it.
Yeah. I'm old enough to remember when the American people were promised Doge stimulus checks from all of the savings from federal government cuts.
Yeah, where are those?
Yeah. Well, we know where they are. They don't exist.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.